Hi, I'm Liz.
And I'm Rhea.
Welcome to Karma's My Bitch, a podcast about love,
sex,
connection, abundance, joy,
purpose,
peace,
and how life isn't simply the stories we tell ourselves.
I always love these first interviews because I feel like they're sort of first date experiences. Like, tell us about yourself. What do you do? But we have the pleasure of being with James McCrae, who is the founder of Words Are Vibrations Instagram account and the author of The Shit Your Ego Says. Did I get that right? And has an upcoming book with poetry and artwork, which we can't wait to get our hands on. Should be out sometime in October, I believe. And we just want to know so much about you right now. I have questions, but Rhea, I think you have the first question.
Well, I mean, I loved your book. I read the first one and I thought it was really, really interesting. I liked how you wrote it because it was it was explaining lessons in different ways. And, you're talking a lot about kind of the ego and how a lot of that was with expectations and consciousness. And I think for me, one of the main things that I found really interesting was kind of, how did you decide to even write that book in the first place? How did it all kind of come about? Is that a very big question, isn't it?
No, it's not a big question. First of all, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you both on our first date. And yeah, so Shit Your Ego Says, that was my first book. And it's a whole journey really to writing your first book, because I always kind of knew in the back of my head that I would write books, or I wanted to, but I never had any idea what they would be about, because I just didn't have a lot of training in that area, or like, I'm not like the kind of person that has like, oh, I'm an expert in dreaming and I'm going to write books about dreaming because that's my work. Right. Yeah. Like, I'm not a psychologist. So it's not like I study the ego per se. And therefore it's like like the book is like a synopsis of my research. I'm first and foremost an artist and a writer and a poet. So my whole life, I've always, whether it's drawing and painting or writing and writing poetry, writing little essays, I've always just been kind of a multifaceted creative. And at a certain point in my kind of personal evolution, I kind of crossed paths with spirituality. And, I have a background in Christianity, having grown up, in the Midwest America, in the Christian tradition. But after kind of leaving more or less that kind of religious framework, I was essentially kind of spiritually homeless. And, art really became my spiritual path, and it still is. So I found a lot of guidance and kind of wisdom in art, in writing, in music. And I think creativity is an expression of spirituality. No matter what the creativity is about, I think creativity is in itself an expression of spirituality. So I was writing, and I had a blog that I was kind of focused on, and the catalyst for the book happened when I was living in Minneapolis, where I'm from the state of Minnesota, and I kind of took a leap of faith to move to New York City. And
I had a similar experience, by the way.
Cool. Yeah.
I get
Not
it.
always easy, because I didn't really have a plan. I didn't really have a support system or a network or a job in New York. I quit my job, gave up my apartment, sold all my stuff, and just took a leap of faith to move to New York City. With kind of a trust, or with a faith that the universe would support me in my pursuit of whatever I would find there. I don't know why I moved there, other than I'd always admired writers and artists who had seemed to spend time in New York and had it's kind of historically a creative hub in that way. And I get to New York, and it's not going super well. I'm having a hard time finding a job. I'm having a hard time finding an apartment. I'm just kind of like trying to just navigate, what I'm doing there. And right when I had finally signed a lease on my first apartment, this is 2012, Hurricane Sandy came along, and it hit New York City. It was the first hurricane and the worst storm to ever hit New York City. And my apartment was destroyed, and suddenly I was homeless. So not only was I like running out of money and like didn't have a job, now I was homeless. So I ended up, just randomly, my friend was like, hey, I have this friend that has this empty kind of like beach cottage on this little island called Culebra in the Caribbean. He's like, let's move there because we don't really have a place to live right now. And I didn't have a job or anything. I didn't have any money to keep living in New York City. So I was like, let's just do it. Like, why not? Like, this was the door that was presented, so I'm just going to take it. And it was really living in Culebra briefly that I started having these breakthroughs, because it was kind of like an existential crisis. So it was like, why did I move to New York? I'm a loser. This isn't going to work out for me. And it was complete uncertainty, and it was complete unknown. And my friend that I was with at the time, he was just like, he encouraged me to lean into that uncertainty. Instead of kind of trying to resist it and kind of figure out a plan, lean into the uncertainty. And that's what I did. And I spent a lot of time kind of alone on the beach looking at the ocean. And that's when I kind of started to recognize in my own head that all my fears and all my anxieties and all these worries that were kind of creeping up, they were just my own ego speaking to me. And that voice wasn't necessarily true or right. Or, I realized that just because I think something doesn't mean it's true.
Right.
And I am not my thoughts. Yeah. So I started to kind of see the difference between the ego mind and more the higher self or the intuition. And I kind of started to kind of pay attention to those different feelings, and gradually learn to shift my awareness away from the ego and towards the higher self. And that's where the idea for Shit Your Ego Says came from. And it's just ironic because, the hurricane and becoming homeless and moving to this island, it seemed like failure in the moment. It seemed like all of that was working against me. But in hindsight, it was all those things, these kind of acts of random misfortune that ended up being the catalyst for this book being written and being birthed into the world and beginning my career as an author. So it seemed like a bad thing at the time, but it was actually the universe opening up a door for me.
It's so interesting because in a previous life, I worked in law. And one of the things there's always is in a contract is something called a Novus actus intervenes, which is effectively the hand of God. And things like that are hurricanes, things that you can't have expected, but totally change your path. And it feels sometimes that, when I hear these stories, that's what I think of a bit, like that we get you to where you need to go, even if you don't, it looks like everything's crumbling down around you. Something has to crumble in order for you to be able to create something new. And so I find that really nice. And it's not kind of from that positive slant way of, turning a negative into positive. It's really that if this didn't happen, this really wouldn't have been created. And, this is an expression of my truth. And I maybe wouldn't have even discovered that truth if it wasn't for that. So I get that.
Yeah, it's kind of like the dark night of the soul. Like there are certain passageways or portals that are opened and you kind of have to go through darkness or fear or overcome something to get through the other side. So it's kind of that's just it's the hero's journey. And and it happens to all of us.
Yeah.
And I think kind of what's happening in the world now with the craziness that's going on in the world is a collective dark night of the soul. It's kind of a collective initiation, or like we're going through a collective portal, and right now it's very, very dark.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you know, having gone through multiple experiences like that myself, and knowing other people that have gone through experiences like that, it's by going through these dark periods of fear and uncertainty that actually lead us to some place that's expanded and better. So my hope is, having experienced that in my own life, that we're going through that collectively right now. And the people that have never had that experience in their own lives are having a really hard time, because they don't know where the tunnel goes, right? So it's kind of a mass, where it ends. Yeah. So it's kind of a mass initiation for the world is kind of how I see it.
Yeah. It's only going to get darker too. So let's see. Yeah. And so is that when you started to create some of the art now that you share with the world? Was that post Culebra, or?
You know, the art has been an evolution. I've always kind of been a sketcher. I've always just kind of drawn and sketched. And so with the book, I did include a few like little illustrations. They're almost like hand-drawn memes, where there's like little hand-drawn cartoons with like phrases on them. So that's when I begin to experiment with kind of you know, illustrating my writing, as opposed to just writing something, but having more of like a visual component. And there's a few examples of those in my first book. And then after that, you know, we live in the age of social media now, right? So when it comes to promoting your work or sharing your work, that's the visual component is pretty important.
Yeah.
And so I've always been focused on that. And you know, over time, what I've tried to do is use social media not as a place to like necessarily share my writing or share my art, but as more thinking in terms of how can I make art and writing that's native to the social media format, right? And there's a difference there. It's like you could be writing or painting and you're just like sharing examples of your work on social media, but it's a slight difference if you're creating art with the social platform in mind. It's kind of like it's a little bit different. So I've kind of been you know, I've kind of leaned into this idea, because I used to wake up, you know, every morning and work on whatever book I was writing at the time. And there was a switch this year where I was like, well, what if I woke up and instead of working on like a book that's going to take years to come out and like no one's going to see it, what if I got up and worked on stuff I could share right away, like interactive social content? And that's where kind of the memes started coming from. And I had kind of made a meme here or there, you know, not really thinking about it. I would just occasionally make one for fun. But then I started really to investigate the idea of the meme as a platform of expression and as an art form unto itself. And that's just been in the past like 6 months. And it's been really fun and exciting to see what that format can do. And I think now that when I look at some of the art that I'm most excited by today, it's a lot of it is kind of internet memes. And I think that we often don't recognize the art form that is happening in the moment. Like with new art forms often seem a little bit like frivolous at first, or like silly, or like not serious, but then eventually they're recognized as being like a new form of art. So that's kind of what I see with memes, is that it's still they're kind of fun and people share them, but really we're learning a new language and we're learning a new artistic format. And we're just kind of at the beginning of a new kind of like internet art form.
No, it makes sense. I think sometimes, before we recorded, we were explaining to you what our podcast is about and talking about karma and power and all that kind of stuff. But the nuances that come with such a big topic and such a big body of work often can be quite wordy. It's taken 125 episodes of a podcast to fully explain that in every way that we can. But sometimes, you'll put out a meme or I'll see something on your Instagram and I'll think, wow, that just explains it in 4 words and an image. And
Exactly.
and it feels it taps into another part of you that, like you were saying, Liz, when, Liz is also not as a fiction author. And, she was explaining how when someone reads something in fiction, it's a different part of your brain that engages with it. I mean, you know much better than I do. I mean, I'm literally
you got it.
So it kind of resonates differently. And I've definitely noticed that in some of my writing, when I write something that isn't so factual in terms of just like, here are some numbers, here are some stats, it definitely resonates with the reader in a very different way. And I have to say, like, looking, I found your page because I remember thinking to myself, these are kind of what I'm trying to say, but it's being said much more simply and with joy, because obviously it has a comedic aspect to it. And I think that's the bit that's missing, because for me anyway, spirituality, it's joy, it's love, it's light. It's not, yes, we have the dark night of the souls, but that's actually our 3D experience. That's all the stuff that, that we've separated from ourselves. It's all the trauma that we've been ignoring, been stuffing down. That's why it's all coming up. We're facing it in our collective dark night of the soul now, or our more individual one. It's basically all the stuff that we've been carrying. But actually spirituality, it's all joy. So having kind of those memes, having that, that light in your work makes, that for me is true spirituality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And thanks for saying that. They say, a picture says 1,000 words, right? Yeah. So it's really the visual component that makes it so communicative. And I have a friend that said that she believes that memes are a step towards telepathy.
Interesting.
That's interesting.
Like it's a big leap forward in communication where you can like essentially, like, because I've read a lot of books. I've studied Buddhism, I've studied, Hinduism, and I've read a lot of literature. And so I've already absorbed a lot of knowledge in a traditional way. But if I find the right image that expresses something, and I can think of, okay, what can I, from all of my research, what can I funnel into this image that communicates something that took me maybe years to learn or research, and I can funnel it into a little square JPEG that tells a story because the picture is adding so much to the words. And then I can post it, and then people see it. And then what happens is their mind unpacks the meaning. So they see the picture, they see the words, and instantaneously their mind is unpacking the meaning from that image. So I'm communicating a whole lot to them through this little image that is, I mean, if that's not a form of telepathy, I don't know what is, right? So as we evolve our language and we evolve as people, I think that it literally is an evolution of language to use memes. And the internet is, I think, like, I'm just kind of an internet nerd myself, and I have been for a long time. So like there is a certain language of the internet that is snarky and irreverent and funny and not serious. And memes live in that vocabulary, so applying spirituality to the language of the internet, which is irreverent and funny, and like the internet language like doesn't take itself too seriously. It's more just kind of making fun of stuff. So when you apply spirituality with that kind of internet lingo, it allows spirituality to be light and to be funny, because that's just how, that's what works on the internet. That's kind of the language that has been developed on there for decades now.
Liz, I have a question. Curious. I'm just curious about this. So when, like, say, for example, when you're creating, let's say, a meme or something, and it's coming from a place of, one would imagine, higher consciousness, and it's got a different type of vibration, does that hold like some kind of like healing coding or healing vibration when someone else looks at it? Does it have that energy attached to it?
Absolutely, without a doubt, it does. It really does.
So
I'm sure, I'm sure that's what drives people to some of these pages and these images for sure, because they're getting something from it, and it's, of course, it's subconscious, but that's enough just to kind of get. Sometimes it's, but the healing isn't going to be, maybe years worth of healing, right? But you're getting like little doses, little hits. And that's
microdosing healing.
You're my exact microdosing memes. Yeah. And so you get enough of that. You're going to get enough that's going to get you either through your day, through your hour, whatever the stress or anxiety that you're experiencing at the time. Yeah. We just need it a little. We need it. We need bigger doses, I think, if we're really going to see the sort of impact we're getting in the coming years. But it's exactly what the world needs right now, more and more, I think. And can I ask, over these years that you have been experiencing this through, Instagram and Twitter, what have you seen shift on these platforms as far as these memes go, and where you feel you fit in, like, and how that's evolving? Is that too layered a question, or?
No, I think memes are always evolving. I mean, the concept of memes is fascinating. A lot of people don't know where that word came from. And the word meme is kind of a variation on the word gene. So in a biological system, a gene is something that can mutate and spread, and then the genes that are, most effective within that system are the ones that replicate and become kind of, spread. So the social scientist Richard Dawkins, I believe this was in the 70s or 80s. I'm not exactly sure when he coined the term, but he coined the term meme as the analog to the gene in biology. So what a gene is to biology, a meme is to ideas. So a meme is any idea that has essentially the viral potential to spread and replicate within a system. So that could be anything. Like, if you think back to like a catchphrase from like the 1960s, like "make love, not war." Someone said that, and then before you know it, everyone's saying it, and then people are making signs that say it.
And it's on a T-shirt.
It's a bit like the British "keep calm and carry on."
Yeah.
Exactly. That's a great meme, because people adapted it. Do this, carry on. Do this and carry on, and it became a viral sensation. That is an early example of a meme. I think Christianity is the biggest meme ever. Yeah. Just the idea, because Christianity has been adapted and put into all these different places and translated in all these ways and been interpreted in all these ways, and it just has gone viral throughout the world. So like in the most general sense of the word, Christianity is like the biggest meme.
Yeah. So funny.
So then the internet is just where memes, like, the internet promotes replication and spreading and going viral. So just the idea of a meme and the idea of the internet they just go hand in hand. So there's always been memes online. They began as really weird, like essentially little GIFs and like images. Like there was like a little dancing baby at one point that became like this big internet thing. And they started off as just kind of weird things that made people laugh out of like confusion and absurdity. They're like, what is this? This is
this cat.
This is ridiculous. I need to share it. Yeah. And it's just because it's ridiculous, and like that's kind of like what the memes are based in, is this idea of like absurdity and being ridiculous. And then I noticed a big switch with memes around one example of like when things started to change is, I don't know if you remember, like in the I think it was the Video Music Awards, the MTV Music Video Awards, when I think Taylor Swift won the music video of the year over Beyonce. Kanye stormed the stage.
Kanye moment.
The Kanye moment. I love Kanye and Taylor. So, you know, this moment is just really huge in pop culture and in memes. Kanye goes on the stage, takes the microphone from Taylor, and he's like, I'm going to let you finish. But Beyonce made one of the best music videos of all time. It was a really funny, you know, moment. And the next morning on the internet, I saw all of these different interpretations where like, it was like Kanye, like, I don't know, in like different scenarios, like taking things and like saying, I'm gonna let you finish. But it was like all interpreted in like dozens of ways. And I'm like, wow, like this is funny. Like all these people went online and like created art based on this moment. And then it just spread. And that's when memes kind of started to change, and the same thing happens now. There's all these images that originate in weird places on the internet that no one quite knows. Like there's a lot of the like the illustrated memes that you'll see. No one knows where these templates come from. Like they'll show up on Reddit or like 4chan or Twitter, these like weird obscure corners of the internet, and then people will take those and they'll adapt them and add text, and then it becomes a viral sensation. And literally no one really knows where the original one came from. So it's just it is a really interesting world, the world of internet memes. And I think this year, along with myself, I've seen a lot of other accounts kind of take on the idea of a meme and start applying philosophy or spirituality to it. And I think they're being called like text memes now or something, where you're kind of like sharing a point of view or like an individual philosophy or a point of view through a meme. So that's why I kind of think it's like the beginning of, you know, the poetry memes or philosophy memes, where people are, you know, individual thinkers are using the format to express their individual points of view. And I think it's great. I mean, I love I love seeing it happen. And, you know, typically the weirder the better. You know, my memes I try to make them a little bit weird, but there are a lot of artists out there that are a lot weirder than me when it comes to like the absurdity of their memes. And I love it. I think it's hilarious. And you know, the weirder the better in the world of memes tends to be the case.
I just find it's so similar, you know, as you're talking about all of this, I just find it so similar to how we would describe kind of 5D and oneness and all that kind of stuff as well. Because it's, you know, we talk about oneness and being divine and spirituality from an idea of that I see the divine in me and I respect the divine in you. And we all have our own experiences and they're just as valid as one another's. So something like a small meme where you have, let's say, a message on there, everyone will be seeing it and interpreting it differently based on their perspective, their lives, their experiences, maybe the issues that they're going through right now, the clarity that they need, their truth. And it allows them to use it in the way that suits them best. And it's not so uniform. Whereas often with long form, and I definitely fall into the trap of this when I'm writing, I almost over-explain so you totally understand my point of view. And sometimes my point of view isn't the point of view that you really need to see. It's your point of view that you need to see. And all I'm here to do is open the door so that you can see it. And so I find sometimes like these, you know, when you're talking about it, it feels like such an effective way for people to see their truth. And also the one thing for me anyway, that I found quite unique about your voice is that it's very hopeful and it's actually very positive. Like I remember speaking to a friend not that long ago and saying, you know, you can learn from good things. It doesn't have to be shitty all the time. You know what I mean? It's not always like the painful lessons that teach us everything. Like you often can learn even more effectively if something nice happens. But, we've, a lot of spirituality, and I think that's based obviously in a lot of religion and a lot of the kind of the world we've been constructed in, is that we can only really learn when things are shitty, and things will continue to be shitty forever. But, I remember there's this meme of you that you had where there was this little girl holding the flowers behind her back. And it's like the universe about to give me all the amazing, it's just shifting the narrative to, life is good. Life can be good. Things are actually not a trial. We're not, stuck in the jungle trying to survive on a leaf for 6 years. We can actually have the good, yummy stuff as well. And I think there's not, that voice is missing a lot from spirituality at the moment. It's all, sorry to say, but it's a lot of conspiracy theories. It's a lot of me versus you. It's a lot of I'm right, you're wrong. We're going to battle separation by remaining separate somehow, whereas actually I find that your voice is very much about unity and joy. And as I said earlier.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a lot of, kind of wallowing in the weight of trauma that, and, frankly, I will acknowledge that, as a white male, I have a certain amount of privilege that allows me to frame things in that way. I will say that, the trauma, we all have trauma in our lives. We all have life
it's
is
all
not
relative
easy
in many ways.
Life is not easy for any of us, but I grew up in a very sheltered childhood in like a very small town in like rural Minnesota. And it was very idyllic and like dreamy, and like I had space to wander and create, and my parents were very loving, and I had lots of friends around me. So I felt I was very nurtured as a child growing up, and my parents encouraged me to express myself and to explore my creativity. And so while I do have, the trauma of being a human being in this limited third dimensional reality, I will say that the way I was nurtured growing up, and it has enabled me has enabled my mind to dwell on the beautiful aspects of life more so than if someone grew up in a much more, traumatic scenario. It's going to be harder for their minds to kind of learn to dwell on the beautiful aspects of life. So I think that we need all kinds of teachers. I think we need people to help people get through their trauma. I think, I'm not, if someone is dealing with like severe trauma, like I might be able to provide a laugh or two, but like I might not be the teacher for that person. They might need to find someone who's more skilled in handling those specific issues that I frankly can't deal with any legitimacy. But I can provide moments of hopefully humor and delight, right?
Comedic relief.
Comedic relief, exactly. And we need that too. We can't always be dwelling in the trauma. We need to step out and laugh. So I'm just hoping to provide people with little glimpses of relief. And sometimes I get accused of like spiritually bypassing with my memes.
Oh,
and it's
do
like,
you?
well,
in what way?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's probably the complaint. I don't get a lot of complaints or negative comments, thank God, but that is one of the things that pops up now and then. And I think it's because, first of all, I always say a meme is not a manifesto. Just because I put a meme on something, it was like I used whatever text and idea fit that image. Like, don't read too much into it. It's just like one perspective of many. You can't, if I make a meme of something, I'm not trying to say like this is the one and only truth that you have to believe. No, it's a meme. It's one idea. There's a million other ideas that are just as valid. So don't like read too much into
and literally in many
meme.
ways, because with a lot of memes, the same image is used quite a lot. So there's literally many different messages in one meme sometimes as well.
Exactly. Yeah. But I noticed some people get if I paint a picture of everything being okay in the world or something like that, everything's beautiful because at the end of the day everything is, I think everything here is temporary, and we're all here to learn lessons, and it's not always fun, but in the grand scheme of things, I believe it is beautiful design.
Yeah.
And when we're in the weeds, when we're in the weeds, we can't always see it, the grand design of it all, because we're getting caught up in the details. But I think in the grand scheme of things, it is a beautiful design, more beautiful than we can even imagine. So if I point that out to people, it can be triggering, because they'd be like, well, what about this X, Y, and Z? And it's like, well, yeah, you're right, but that's just not the point I'm making at this time. So people will be like, you're spiritual bypassing. And I'm like, well,
you're like, next week I won't be.
Next week I won't be. And also, like, spirituality, like, I get spiritual bypassing. It's like, we need to be focused on the reality. We can't be just living in the clouds. We need to have our feet grounded as well. But to a certain degree, spirituality is what allows us to bypass. And that's not always a bad thing. It allows us to elevate beyond the nitty gritty of the 3D reality and to kind of open ourselves to something greater. So I do certainly think that we should have, our heads in the clouds and our feet grounded firmly on the ground, so we can live both as spiritual beings and as human beings, and hold space for that contradiction.
Completely. Yeah.
Because as we say, we are divine beings having a human experience, effectively, right? And so if we miss the humanity of it, we've missed the point. But also, if we forget the divine part, we miss the expanded perspective, and we do miss the beauty. I can't believe I'm saying this. What have you done to me?
It took me 3 years, girl.
Who am I? I was so miserable when I started. And now, like, life is roses.
You're like, I'm the girl holding the flowers behind her back. I'm officially a James McCrae meme.
Perfect. Mission accomplished.
So where do you derive a lot of this inspiration for your art? I mean, do you meditate? Is it just do you dream? I mean, where does it just kind of emerge every so often? Like, what is your, I don't want to even know, I'm not going to use that word. So how does it work for you?
I'm curious about the word you're not going to use, but
your process.
My process. That's a perfectly fine word.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I've been thinking about lately and saying is that the most important step of creativity is cultivating your own intuition.
Okay.
For anyone, no matter who they are, no matter what artistic medium that they pursue. The most important step of creativity is cultivating your intuition. So I am a meditator. I meditate every day. I've studied meditation. I'm a certified meditation teacher. I'm a certified Kundalini yoga instructor. So I've read a ton of books and like studied a lot of like different philosophies. So I've done plant medicine. So I've lived a life that has kind of opened my channel to, inspiration. And I think that because most of my best ideas are kind of more like moments of insight or subconscious downloads that aren't my conscious mind trying to figure something out. It's more just like an aha moment. So I do my best just to create that open channel, and that could be through meditating, through just dancing around the room, like whatever it is to kind of open yourself up and literally just listening to, I call it like listening to the space between your thoughts. Because if we're listening, like the thought level is kind of like the surface level of the ocean. It's like you might see some fish on the surface, but really it's about going that space between your thoughts that kind of cuts through into the cosmos. And that's like going deep into the ocean where, it's much more expansive and there's a lot more fish down there. So getting out of the conscious mind and tapping into intuition, the space between your thoughts, and always being ready, like it's usually in the morning where I get a lot of ideas, but things pop up throughout the day that I just try to write down. And then, you know, that's the initial step. That's the idea, but then you still need to execute. And that's where, you know, I've got years of practice as a writer, as a poet, as a graphic designer. So then once you have that initial idea, you need to use your actual tools. It's the divine and the human, right? You might get a divine inspiration, but someone needs to make the meme.
Yeah.
So that's where the human being, like, that's where, you know, I know I know how to use Photoshop. I know how to write. I know how to like craft a message in a certain way. Because if I just wrote down exactly the idea as it came to me, it might not be effective. So I do need to like, you know, experiment with technique to bring something to life that's going to be communicative. So, and then I try to experiment with lots of different techniques. I might do an illustration. I might do a meme. I might write a poem. I might write a little mini essay. So I've got a lot of different techniques that I've kind of honed over the years, and I can kind of tap into them to communicate different things for different messages.
I mean, it's interesting. At the beginning of this, we were talking about how Liz channels a lot during our episodes and all of it, but it feels like you do exactly the same thing in just a slightly different way. Just, I guess, like I would in a slightly different way. And I think that's what's missing often when I started this whole journey, which I also hate as a word. You know, I thought that someone being spiritual was so special. They had all these special gifts that I could never have.
But I said no.
Yeah. You know, and actually we all have that. We all have that connection should we wish to cultivate it. And it will just be expressed in the best way in which we can express it. But that doesn't make it the fact that I maybe when I'm writing, it comes out, or when you're, you know, your process, it comes out, or when Liz is maybe listening and using her pendulum, it comes out. It's all the same, isn't it? It's just being expressed differently. And I just find that really beautiful because it's an extension of us, but one that we're able to share and then use to kind of serve the community or serve the wider, at the moment, it feels like serve everyone, because we all need a little bit of help in this time, which is a bit more difficult than other times.
Yeah, no, I agree. I always love seeing these, I think it's become a little popular right now to see certain spiritual people who are like channeling like the Galactic Federation or like the Pleiadians or different like alien starseed families. And I find that funny. And I don't like 100% understand it myself.
No, me neither.
But like I get what they're doing. Like they are doing the same thing as me. Like I don't take that stuff seriously. So for me, it's just like I'm channeling inspiration for art. But if someone else might get an idea and they're going to interpret it as alien communication. Yeah. And it is. And I mean, in its own way, it is, because where does it come from? It's coming from somewhere out there in the universe that I don't know and can't see. So if you want to interpret that as being coming from some alien starseed family, who am I to say it's not? It's just, you know, I don't like to label things. Yeah. So for me, it's just inspiration and intuition. But if you want to interpret it as being the Pleiadians, great. I just don't take things that literally myself to believe that, but I don't see any. I do think it's a similar process.
I mean, literally exactly the same. I mean, I'm obviously really lucky that, you should see some of our WhatsApp conversations. It's like, Liz, tell me about aliens. What do I need to know? You know, it's like, there's a lot of that kind of stuff.
My response is nothing. You don't need to know anything.
You know, and I always say for me, it's, you know, I've said this, I know a couple of times before, it's like, it's everything we have is a beautiful story. It's a story and it's telling us something in the form of a story. So whether we're talking about Adam and Eve, whether we're talking about the aliens, whether we're talking about anything, the root of that story will always be the point. It's just being told to us in a different way so that our brains can understand it. You know, and I think that's what we should be looking for when we hear the stories. Like, what are they really saying? Are they talking about empowerment? Are they talking about disempowerment? Are they talking about fear? Are they talking about freedom? Like, whatever the point of the story will be, you know, the bit that for me anyway is the bit that we should be listening to.
Yeah, and that's what mythology is, right? It's like it's essentially a fiction that tells a truth. Yeah. So I think we lost the language of mythology, because everything is taken so literally. Like there'd probably be like, oh, you channel the Pleiadians? Well, I channel the Arcturians. The Pleiadians lie.
Yeah.
The Arcturians tell the truth. Or like whatever. It's like you're getting like you're getting lost in the details of the myth and like not seeing the underlying truth. So I think we live in a society that's entirely too literal.
Yeah.
And then when everything is so literal, it becomes everyone like speaking in these argumentative absolutes.
Yes.
When like what's the
right?
Which is separation. So what's the underlying truth that's behind all of the myths that we're all trying to communicate? And like, can we hold space for the subtlety and the nuance of all these different stories that we're trying to tell each other? They're all stories.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I'm curious because my hope is that this will land for someone who is perhaps quite a creative person, but hasn't quite figured out. I mean, perhaps they have their own process or medium, but about getting it out there in terms of consistency, because as an artist, as a writer, whatever you're doing, as a creator, there's a level of consistency that's required and what I would dare call a discipline. So perhaps you don't have a set schedule, or maybe you do, but I think that's also what I wanted to sort of drive at is when you are focused on a particular project, say you're creating this book or some other body of work that you want to do, how much discipline do you apply? What do you do in order to bring it to completion? Because that can be a real struggle for a lot of creative people, especially now when there's so much noise and everything. So I'm quite curious because I feel like as a writer myself and doing this work, you do need a bit of that to be able to get a podcast out on time. And
I mean, if I didn't have a slave driver, we'd have one episode out, not as many as we do.
I have very strict deadlines for Rhea.
Well, you guys are a good team. Yeah, I mean, for me, creativity is my spiritual ritual. Like some people get up and pray and meditate or whatever. I get up with the intention every morning of creating.
Okay.
And if you want to be an artist or be a creative, like you have to have rituals around it. You have to make it a ritual. You have to make it it has to be a habit. It has to be habitual. Yeah. Now, I am a very unstructured person. Mm-hmm. Even scheduling this podcast, I was like, didn't get back to you till like last night. And so I don't have a tight schedule at all. So I'm very disciplined, but I'm very loose in my discipline because I love doing it. I love I get excited by like, there are some like sentences out there that everyone just knows. Like think of like Shakespeare, like to be or not to be.
Right.
Like one day he just woke up and wrote that. And now it's something hundreds of years later that everyone just knows. So I'm just like literally get excited by, I could just wake up today and write the next to be or not to be. Just like, oh, there it is. Like it took me 2 seconds and now that's a sentence that's going to live on for eternity. Like that's the power of that's the power of creativity. And I literally get excited to do that every day. And sometimes I get a lot of ideas. Sometimes I don't get any ideas, but you need to show up consistently to give the idea. You need more chances at bat,
Yes.
You can hit a home run. You're more likely to hit a home run the more times you go to bat. So it's just about giving yourself enough like chances at bat to swing and hit a home run. And some people are like, oh, I have to write 1,000 words a day. Like I'm really disciplined and like I want to. That's not me at all. Like I rather like when I was working, if I'm working on a book, I might spend a whole day trying to like tweak a paragraph.
Okay.
And like I might not even write a new paragraph. I mean, tweak an existing paragraph because I just want to like make sure it's really good. Mm-hmm. So I don't give myself like deadlines or word counts or like strict things to follow. I'm very loose, but I do show up every day just to give myself another chance at bat.
I love that baseball metaphor. See, Rhea, it's in every American. We can't help ourselves. It's inevitable.
Yeah, I don't even like baseball, but it's in our blood.
It is.
I feel I need to study it a bit more because every now and again a baseball metaphor gets thrown out and I'm like, I feel I should know what this means. I'm just not sure. And then once we were writing and I used a baseball metaphor and I'm like, oh, she's converted me.
What do you want? Like a cricket metaphor?
I guess I don't know. Yeah, I don't even understand cricket. I guess football maybe, but you guys would call it soccer.
Yeah.
You're doing so well. I'm so proud of you.
I know the difference.
So how do you know if something's finished then? If you're not creating these deadlines, and I'm not trying to challenge you because we do try to be a bit fluid. It's just two people working together.
Yeah, I'm very
I think Rhea is like, I really connect with this.
I'm really connecting with this. Like sometimes I'll be like, I'll try. Then, you know, I'll end up writing a chapter in 2 hours and not understand how it came out. And then for days before I'd been like basically writing blah, blah, blah on a wide screen, you know?
Well, at a certain point you need to be done because, and that's one thing that working in the Instagram medium has taught me, like you got to put it out. Like you just got to put it. It's about consistency and like, you know, frequency more so than, you know, perfection. So I've gotten pretty good at just looks fine, done, looks fine, done, looks fine, done. But I think that took me a long time of like, you know, I'm like a pretty serious editor as well. So like I've gotten good at, I guess, just reviewing my own work and just if it feels done. Because you can go on forever. Like if it's especially with a meme, not so much, but like with a book or something, like you can go in circles. So at a certain point, you want to put in enough work so you don't feel like you're selling the work short. You don't want if it feels like you're rushing it and you just don't feel good about it, that's not going to be great. So you want to put in enough work in to feel good about what you're putting out, but you can't overthink it. You have to ship. You've got to be, it's not easy. And I get this because I've been there, but you got to feel comfortable just being like done. Because like you might make some changes that no one else will even notice.
Right.
Like if the spirit and the essence is there, you got to be comfortable sharing. And that's what's good about social media is you have to get comfortable sharing. Like
it's a real exercise.
I used to post like once a week and now I'm like posting twice a day and it's like I don't even care. Like I don't overthink it anymore. So it's a fine balance because you do want to put the work in and the craftsmanship in to make sure what you're doing is good, but also you're not always making it better by spending more time on it. Like there's I have a British metaphor for you.
Oh yeah, okay, I'm down. I'm ready.
Let's do this.
The Rolling Stones.
Yep.
So when they made their famous song Satisfaction, it's one of the most famous rock and roll songs ever. They were recording a demo in a studio like in the morning or something, and like they just wrote the song. They recorded like one demo of the song, then they like went to go get some food or something. Like literally like their manager took the tapes and like of the demo, the first demo, and they're just like, oh, this is good, we need a song on the radio right now, I'm gonna go put it on the radio. They never imagined that song to be done. That was a work in progress and a demo they were working on. Their manager took it and put it on the radio, and that's the song that's been playing for over 50 years now, is this rough demo that's now this timeless classic. So sometimes more tinkering and more polishing doesn't actually help the product. Sometimes having a little bit of like a real, you know, a little bit of an unpolished feeling brings more life and energy to something.
I mean, I've definitely noticed that with even the podcast or with some of our writing. Like initially when we started, and I was in a very vulnerable, scared place where everything mattered so much, especially what other people thought of me, I would over edit the podcast so that there was no distinguishing features about my life, how I felt. There was no vulnerability at all. And the more I started owning myself, the more I started, you know, kind of coming at peace with what I'd experienced and who I was and what I wanted. Now our podcasts are a good 7-8 minutes longer because I'm just like, yeah, fine. Here, we laugh about this, or here I'm really open and honest, but that's who I am. And I think for me anyway, the moment it's done is the more you own yourself, the more you know who you are, the quicker you do know when something's done. Because sometimes there are episodes or words that I've written that are so vulnerable, so hard for me to look back on, but I'll never be able to recreate that again when I'm feeling better. And to try and fix it now would be almost to miss the connection to those people who are feeling like that. And it would be putting out a polished version of myself that isn't true, as well. Yeah. So I understand totally.
Especially, I think that's more true now than ever before, because we live in the era of like live streaming.
Yeah.
Like that's like people are live streaming, people are going, YouTubers are just putting stuff out. Like authenticity and realness and like vulnerability, these are assets now in the communication economy. So overthinking things and spending too much time on something is almost counterintuitive to being authentic and being vulnerable and showing yourself, showing your heart. I think these are assets now in the world of live streaming and digital communication, where authenticity connects more so than polish.
I remember I heard something, and I'm not even going to try and quote it because I'm sure I'd misquote it, and I'm so sorry, I can't even remember where it's from. But the one thing, one of the things as humans that we find most attractive in someone else are qualities we want to have. So if we see someone who is so in love with themselves that they're able to be vulnerable and authentic and honest, they are naturally so much more attractive, because if they love themselves to that degree, we want to as well. So actually it's very counterintuitive how I was operating for so long, where I wasn't myself and I was so worried about how I would be perceived, when actually what I was effectively saying was, you might fall in love with the mirror, but you're never going to fall in love with me. And, and I know it's really hard now with cancel culture and how people are so quick to judge and shame and to tell you how you're wrong. But actually, in a way, if we can look at it differently, is that it's good to see how all the things that were first in, which was always kind of the secret judging and the secret shaming, they're coming out so we can see it, so that we can heal it, and so that we can, I guess, overcome it. Because actually you and I might have totally different views on something, but that doesn't matter. Doesn't mean that either of us are any better or worse than each other. We just have different perspectives because we've had different lives. That's it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the idea of censoring each other and canceling each other on social media, I think we're reaching a tipping point where people are getting really sick of that. And obviously, that there's good intentions behind all of that happening. We don't want to have, I don't think we should, hold space for, sexism or racism. And there are certain things that should be canceled, right? But I think it trickled out into like any opinion that differs from my opinion needs to be silenced. And I think that people are starting to kind of like course correct and be like, oh, we might have overstepped this idea of like censorship and canceling. So. And we need to kind of give each other space for differing opinions.
Well, ultimately for me anyway, it's all a question of respect. When we're talking about, I am a female. I'm originally Palestinian. I'm, obviously Arabic. There's a lot about me and Liz, we're not the stereotypical white male, but for me, yes, obviously sexism, racism, obviously, we're not a stereotypical. I don't know if you knew this. I don't know if you knew, Liz. You're not mad. Obvious. But for me, all those things are effectively, we're saying you're not respecting my divinity. You're not respecting the fact that I am, divine in human form. You're not respecting that I'm God in my world. And just as much as we can say that, then at the same time is that we have to do that back out. I respect that you have an opinion. Just as, you respect me, I respect you. And it kind of comes back to that. I think for me anyway, whenever I am faced with something like that, my first question is, where's the lack of respect here? Because there's going to be somewhere at some point, whether it's from me or whether it's from the other person. And that lack of respect normally comes from a place of hurt, of fear, of pain. It's not coming from a place of, like, we don't judge and shame other people because we feel great about ourselves. So, when we approach it from that way, we're also respecting their journey in a different way. So for me, it's all kind of all wrapped up in that very space. And I think the more we move towards that, the more voices like yours that have that light, that have that positive, that can put humor and joy into things, the more we're able to kind of move towards a place where we're able to respect one another, have compassion for one another in a real life way, not in this kind of I'm going to by a tree way.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of projection on social media by people who have not yet sufficiently dealt with their own shit. Right? Yeah. I think maybe we need to like have some kind of like spiritual barometer of like, once someone has sufficiently dealt with their own shit, then they're allowed to comment on other people's feeds, right? Because we're just like flinging trauma at each other blindly. But I think that I don't think you can show up effectively in the world to help others until you've healed yourself to a good degree. So and that's why that's say, step one.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, like, that's when we're talking about, it's all the work that I have now learned, actually the way to serve is serve yourself first. The way to respect someone else, respect yourself first, be joy, be happy. Then you can help other people do the same. If you're coming from a place of fear and pain and trauma, you're just looking for validation, and you're just going to end up perpetuating separation over and over and over again, thinking that you're helping other people, but actually satiating your ego. It doesn't work.
I agree 100%.
I feel like we've taken up a lot of your time. So,
but I had one more question.
Okay, go. Please. I'm going to stop talking.
I'm sorry, but I'm really annoying because I seem to have a one-track mind about this, because I think one of the gifts that you are offering others is the ability to have the courage to do a bit of what you do, right? To learn to live in flow, to learn to live according to their own sort of spiritual barometer and what feels right and express their truth. But I'm sure that early on, as you were coming into this practice and coming into we'll call them your rituals, where it was, how did you prevent, or how did you start to deal with burnout? Because one of the most common things we're going to be seeing in the coming, this year, especially even right now, but I think in the next year or two, is really people having to confront how burned out they are. Because as they're trying to run away from all their trauma and stuff, or as they're scrambling to figure out what their next steps are because they really want to discover their purpose or something, there's a great deal of like global burnout going on. But it seems like no matter how much you are creating, unless you just find more energy from what you're creating, you don't seem particularly burned out, even if you're posting twice a day. So you have figured something out for yourself. And I'm just wondering if there's anything that you can impart to other creatives.
Yeah, a few things come to mind. First of all, I'm doing what I want to do, not what I have to do.
Yes.
So I definitely felt more burnout when I was like working in more of a corporate environment. Like I used to work in advertising agencies as like a strategist on Madison Avenue in New York City. So like there's been burnout when burnout happens more often when you're like put into situations where you're putting all your energy towards something you quote have to do as opposed to something you want to do. So it's very important to dedicate your energy to things that you choose to do, that you want to do. And even if you have a job, like a traditional corporate job, you can still find some reason to want to do it. Like maybe you want to show up for your coworkers, and you want to do that, so it's really important to reframe things to something I have to do to something I really want to do and I choose to do. That reframing is huge because, because now I'm doing creative work and I love to do it. I get energized by it. I wake up wanting to do it. At the same time, I'm still learning the balance to like walk away. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to give myself a day to do nothing. Yeah. And like, it's still something I have to remind myself to like enjoy myself and have fun. because I do have fun creating. I mean, I do have legitimate fun creating art. It's the one thing that I love to do more than anything else. But even that you can get burnt out by. So I have to remind myself to like, I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to go do something fun. I'm just going to let my body do nothing. So it's still something I need to kind of remind myself to do, to kind of put the phone down and like, I'm not going to make anything today. Even if I want to, I'm going to be like, you know what? No, I'm good. You're going to rest today. So it's definitely important to listen to your body, and don't do something because you feel pressure to do it, but like listen to your body and see what feels good and follow that. The wisdom of the body, I cannot overstate like the importance of the wisdom of the body. The body knows if it needs to rest, it knows if it needs to work out, if it knows if it wants to dance. So getting out of your own head and like listening to what the body wants is such like an underrated thing to do in our society.
I mean, that's consciousness, isn't it? Being conscious of your bodies, all of them. And I mean, I'm really lucky. I have a work wife who says it's time for you to go on holiday now, you know? So I have, you know, and
it's time for me to go on holiday.
Yeah, just as much as I have the deadlines, I also have the like, you're on break now, because you're not going to be able to create anything new until your brain has given a break, you know, or whatever it is. And it's so true, because now I've experienced it, you know, over the past, you know, for me anyway, like I live, you know, my flat, my couch became my office. It became my place where I chilled. It became the place where I entertained. It became everything to me. So I couldn't delineate. So I'd be watching TV thinking, wait a second, shouldn't I be working right now? You know, so really having that consciousness to be able to go, actually, I just want to watch Twilight, you know, is so great, because maybe
to admit that.
I know, sorry. But, you know, maybe the inspiration will come from something else. Like sometimes it doesn't come, you know, we'll get triggered from other places. We'll get, you know, we can't just sit in a room, in a white walled room and expect to know, you know, and to learn everything we need. Sometimes.
No, you need to have a full cup. If you're going to give to others, you need to have a full cup yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the same like with writing. Like it's so important to have life experience. Like you need to go out and do stuff. You need to go out and get into trouble. You need to go out and like fall in love. You need to go out and get your heart broken.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have personal experiences to draw from, like what are you going to talk about? Like you need to like you know, you need to like live a life. You need to like experience the extremes, the ups and the downs of life if you want to have anything to communicate.
Yeah. And that's what I felt was so beautiful about your first book, was that there was so many life experiences in there, and some stuff that, you know, you really spoke about stuff that maybe other people didn't necessarily feel comfortable sharing, but just hit a part of when I was reading it, for sure. There's like, oh my gosh, like, you know, either that's something that we say or that's something that I feel, you know, and to be able to be told it in the form of a story or an example, and to be, you know, oh, this person lives. Like, I mean, you were talking about, you know, sex and work and everything. And I mean, that's the kind of stuff that, you know, we're not here to teach people how to live spiritual lives. We're here to teach people how to live.
Yeah.
And being spirituality will almost become redundant if you're living, and that's the point. And I think, you know, a lot of the time, like that was so beautiful about your first book, and I'm so excited for the second, because even, you know, it's kind of that beautiful mixture of the memes, you know, with that truth and with that experience, and I think it's going to be really great, and I'm definitely pre-ordering it.
Yes. Can't wait for it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the pre-order is available now you can find the link on my Instagram at Words Are Vibrations. And like I said, it'll be out in October, but it's available to pre-order now if you want to make sure that you get a copy right away.
Yeah, no, I can't wait. And thank you so much for coming on today. It's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. This was delightful.
Yeah. So maybe it'll end with a second date. Who knows?
I think it just might.
Thank you for listening. For more information, articles, and inspiration, find us at karmasmybitch.com and at karmasmybitch.insta.
And if you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review.